The 27th of June, 1941, 6:30 a.m., somewhere near Smolensk, Soviet Union. The early morning mist clings to the ground like a cold shroud. The smell of damp earth mingles with the acrid scent of smoke from distant artillery fires. In the pale light, silhouettes of soldiers move cautiously along the tree line. Among them, a small group of women, faces grim with resolve, grips rifles and machine guns tightly. These are not medics or support staff, they are combatants, trained to fight just as fiercely as their male comrades. The Wehrmacht's advance into Soviet territory had been swift, ruthless, and devastating. Towns fell in hours, villages were razed in the blink of an eye. But the Red Army was not only made up of men. From the outset of Operation Barbarossa, the Soviet Union mobilized women into every conceivable combat role: snipers, pilots, machine gunners, tank crews, communications officers, and even partisan fighters behind enemy lines. Women were everywhere on the Eastern Front, facing the same relentless threat of artillery, gunfire, and aerial bombardment as the men they fought alongside. Yet, while their courage was unquestionable, the fate of captured female soldiers was horrifyingly uncertain. Unlike male prisoners, whose treatment was nominally governed by the Geneva Conventions, women who fought on the front lines were often considered illegal combatants by the Germans. They were violating societal and military norms simply by holding a rifle. Captured female soldiers could expect little mercy. In many instances, they faced immediate execution. In others, they endured abuse and humiliation before death. The early encounters between Soviet women and German forces were marked by confusion, fear, and brutality. Archival photographs reveal women marching alongside male soldiers, their faces set in grim determination. Some were snipers, trained for months or even years, camouflaging themselves in forests and ruins, picking off German officers from hundreds of meters away. Others were machine gunners, laying down suppressive fire while comrades maneuvered. And when the inevitable happened, capture, there was no handbook or protection waiting for them. Orders from the German High Command, while sometimes inconsistent, often reflected a chilling reality. Female combatants were labeled illegal fighters, a designation that carried grim consequences. These women were not considered soldiers in the traditional sense. They were rebels, insurgents, or worse, anomalies that the army felt compelled to punish. It wasn't just battlefield pragmatism, it was ideology. The Nazis viewed women in combat as a direct challenge to the patriarchal norms that underpinned their military and political worldview. Accounts from survivors, historians, and contemporary reports paint a vivid, horrifying picture. Women who surrendered sometimes faced interrogation with extreme cruelty. Physical abuse was common, and in the most tragic instances, summary execution awaited them in the back of a truck or the shadow of a forest. Their bravery on the battlefield often became the reason for their suffering, as the German forces regarded their presence as a provocation. Yet, even under these conditions, Soviet women persisted. The resilience of these fighters became legendary. In forests, ruins, and the snow-covered steppes, they held the line, operated in partisan detachments, and carried out sabotage missions behind enemy lines. Every successful operation was a direct affront to the German perception that women had no place in war. And it was precisely this defiance that led to such harsh retaliation when they were captured. By mid-1942, as the war dragged on, German soldiers began to recognize that these women were not simply support staff. They were combatants who could kill, sabotage, and disrupt supply lines. The fear and hatred this inspired among their captors often translated into violence once the women were in custody. Behind the barbed wire of temporary POW camps, or in the forests where prisoners were executed, the line between soldier and civilian blurred tragically, leaving these brave women in an especially perilous position, the Eastern Front, in its scale and ferocity, created conditions unlike any other theater of war. For Soviet women on the front lines, the hazards extended beyond the battlefield. They were fighting not only bullets and shells but a system that denied them the protections afforded to their male counterparts. Their courage would be remembered, but their suffering was a grim reminder of the cost of total war. The 14th of August, 1942, 3:15 p.m., outskirts of Stalingrad. Smoke rises from the ruins of apartment blocks, carrying the metallic tang of blood and the acrid stench of burning buildings. The clatter of boots echoes across streets once alive with civilians. In a shattered courtyard, a group of Soviet soldiers lies wounded and captured. Among them, women sit with bruised faces and disheveled hair, their uniforms torn, hands bound with rough rope. They are prisoners now, and the rules of engagement that protected male POWs seem distant and meaningless here. The German army's treatment of female prisoners was inconsistent but often ruthless. While some units adhered to the regulations of the Geneva Conventions, many considered women in combat to be outside the scope of such protections. Captured female snipers, machine gunners, and partisans were often segregated from male POWs. They were interrogated with extreme severity, sometimes beaten, threatened, or subjected to psychological abuse. Orders often dictated that such women were to be executed on the spot if they were deemed too dangerous or influential. Eyewitness accounts and post-war testimonies reveal the range of abuses these women endured. Some were forced to march for hours under the sun, beaten if they faltered. Others were humiliated, stripped of their rank insignia, and treated as criminals rather than soldiers. Execution, where it occurred, was often swift and brutal, a stark warning to other women who might dare take up arms. Despite these atrocities, many women retained a remarkable sense of resilience. Letters, diaries, and oral histories recount how captured female soldiers would secretly share food, provide comfort, and even attempt to escape under the cover of darkness. Some were able to smuggle messages back to their units, warn comrades of German positions, or sabotage equipment before being discovered. Their courage persisted even in captivity, a silent defiance against overwhelming odds. The ideology of the German High Command also played a role in shaping their treatment. Nazi doctrine viewed combat as a male domain, and the presence of women with rifles represented a violation of both gender norms and military propriety. Female fighters were dehumanized, portrayed as unnatural or even monstrous, which often justified cruel measures in the eyes of their captors. In some instances, captured women were forced into labor, constructing fortifications, carrying supplies, or performing menial tasks under harsh supervision. The brutality of this forced labor, combined with the risk of execution, created an environment of constant fear. Malnutrition, disease, and exposure to the elements compounded the psychological trauma of captivity. Yet, the stories of resistance continued. Some women managed daring escapes, returning to partisan units or even rejoining frontline forces. These acts of courage and determination became the stuff of legend, inspiring other soldiers and contributing to the mythos of the Soviet woman warrior. Even as the German army sought to break their spirits, these women refused to relinquish their dignity, fighting in whatever small ways they could, even while behind enemy lines. The harsh treatment of female POWs on the Eastern Front also highlights the broader war crimes committed during this period. While male POWs suffered greatly, women often faced unique forms of abuse due to their gender. The combination of combat participation and captivity created a deadly intersection of risk, ideology, and violence that few could survive unscathed. In examining these stories, historians note that the experiences of captured women reveal much about the nature of total war on the Eastern Front. The war blurred the line between soldier and civilian, male and female, lawful combatant and outlaw. Women who dared to fight challenged both enemy soldiers and prevailing societal norms, and their treatment reflects the fear and hatred their presence provoked. The 3rd of February, 1943, 9 a.m., Volga River, Stalingrad. The icy winds whip across the frozen riverbanks, carrying fragments of smoke from burning buildings and the distant boom of artillery. The women who fought here have left their mark on history. Some survived the war, returning to Soviet lines with stories of courage, suffering, and defiance. Others perished in captivity, their names etched into the silent annals of the Eastern Front. The legacy of Soviet women in combat is profound. They shattered gender expectations, proving that courage and skill are not confined by sex. Pilots, snipers, medics, and partisan fighters earned military decorations, received commendations, and became symbols of resilience. Yet their stories are often intertwined with tragedy, as many endured the unimaginable horrors of capture and death. Historians studying the Eastern Front emphasize that the experiences of these women illuminate broader truths about warfare. Total war does not discriminate, it is a maelstrom that consumes all in its path. Yet within that chaos, acts of bravery, resistance, and moral courage stand out. Soviet women in combat embodied both the horror and heroism of their era. Memorials, books, and documentaries today seek to preserve these stories. Archival photographs show women with rifles slung across their backs, eyes resolute, standing shoulder to shoulder with men. Diaries and letters reveal their inner thoughts, the fear, determination, and hope that sustained them through years of unimaginable hardship. Each account is a testament to human resilience in the face of atrocity. Reflecting on the treatment of captured female soldiers, one sees the complex interplay of ideology, military necessity, and human cruelty. The German perception of women in combat as illegal or abnormal contributed to the brutality they faced. Yet, even under the harshest conditions, these women demonstrated extraordinary strength, courage, and ingenuity. Their stories remain a vital part of World War II history, reminding us of the costs of war and the indomitable spirit of those who refuse to yield. As we remember the Eastern Front, it is essential to honor both the victories and the sacrifices. The women who fought, resisted, and, in some cases, paid the ultimate price, deserve recognition. They are not merely footnotes in history, they are heroes whose lives offer lessons in bravery, resilience, and the enduring human will to resist oppression. The war may have ended decades ago, but the memory of these women lives on, in books, in films, and in the quiet reflection of those who study the past. Their courage continues to inspire, serving as a reminder that even in humanity's darkest hours, acts of heroism and defiance shine brightly, illuminating the path for future generations.